People often underestimate just how difficult it can be to fight multiple opponents at once. Take this fight, for example. It starts out as a 2v2, but we quickly eliminate one of our opponents, and then it becomes a 2v1, making it far easier to overwhelm and defeat that remaining opponent. There's a lot to think about in any sword fighting situation, and the more opponents you have, the more complicated it becomes. If I'm fighting one person and the difficulty of the fight is at a certain level, adding another person doubles the difficulty of that fight. Oftentimes as well, the skill of your opponents has less of an effect on the battle than you think it should. Numbers in of themselves are significant in a battle. However, it is possible for a single swordsman to do well against multiple opponents if you know the right strategies to employ. So, when you're thinking about writing competent swordsmen in your books, fighting multiple opponents at once, which often happens in our stories, then you'll want to know these strategies to help that fight be realistic. A swordsman's first priority when fighting multiple opponents alone is to break up their opponents as much as possible. You want to only fight one person at a time if possible. And it is possible a lot of the time, more than you might think it would be. There's a strategy a swordsman can employ called body blocking. This is where you try and keep one of your opponents in the way of the others. Take this fight, for example. The first thing I do in this battle is cut hard left to try and keep one of my opponents always in the way of the other. That way, I'm only ever fighting one at a time. It takes a lot of circling and a lot of movement and a lot of footwork, but it can be worth it if I even the odds. If I'm doing all this dancing around in the fight, and it successfully makes it so I only have to fight one opponent at a time, then I have evened the playing field. In this fight, for example, I cut to the left, I'm able to isolate one opponent, I cut him down, and then I go after the other. So even though in this situation I am outnumbered, I end up only having 2 duels in a row, which is far easier than attacking 2 people at once. So body blocking can be extremely helpful, turning what could be an overwhelm and surround situation into multiple duels in a row if you're willing to run that much. In addition to body blocking, I often just retreat backward a lot, sweeping my sword, trying to take out my opponent's legs one at a time, and then I only stop when there's only one of them left, and then I can duel him, kill him, and then move forward, taking out each person I gimped on the way there. Something else swordsmen can think about is utilizing the length of their weapon. If you have a weapon that's longer than your opponent's, then use that length to your advantage. Control the distance between you and your opponents. Make it impossible for them to advance until you've cut down their numbers. Of course, also, if you have the element of surprise, you can ambush them. Surprise attack, take out a few of them before they really know what's going on, and then you can fight the rest as best you can with body blocking, with retreating, and with long reach weapons, controlling that distance, like I said before. So there are some strategies that competent swordsmen think about while fighting multiple opponents. I hope that was helpful to you, and I hope you were able to integrate some of these things into your books, knowing that swordsmen sometimes just do one of these strategies, but often really employ all of them at the same time. I should say that most swordsmen really don't want to fight more than one opponent at a time because of how dangerous it is and how difficult it is. So the 0th rule, the number one strategy that most swordsmen employ is just don't engage a bunch of opponents at the same time. Of course, when you don't have an option, you really just have to go for it. But if there's at all any other options, you do want to avoid it. I hope that was helpful. Have fun writing sword fights in your book, and I will see you in my next video.